To a lot of people, the Hyundai Inster can simply be seen as an extended microcar. And in principle, that's exactly what it is. But I would argue that this car could actually serve as the primary vehicle for many Danes. Of course, it's not meant for the traveling salesperson, but let's say it's the grandparents who mostly drive around locally and occasionally need to visit their grandchildren on the other side of the country. Then I would argue that it could actually be used for that. That's what I'm going to explore in this video. I'm going to test how much energy it consumes, how far the range is, both on country roads and also on the fastest stretch of highway we have in Denmark. And in this video, you'll also get the 5 best and also the 5 worst things I can tell you about a Hyundai Inster. Imagine coming up with this design for the rear end and making the taillights so big that there's only room for a Hyundai logo between them. Well, electric cars are a funny thing. The practical range can be almost irrelevant if you have the ability to charge like I do, that is, in your own driveway or at least close to your home, where you can AC charge overnight. Fortunately, that's the reality for many people, and increasingly so. Thumbs up to that. However, there's also the focus on those infrequent trips where you need to travel beyond the car's practical range. This I'll be testing in this video. I'm going to take the trip around Ringkøbing Fjord, and of course, I'll also do my Odense challenge. But let's start with the trip around the fjord. This is about driving 140 kilometers on country roads, and it's happening right now. The first thing I do is set the navigation towards Sundevik. According to the car, I'll arrive in Sundevik with 53% state of charge. If we just take a look at what I have at the moment, I currently have 77%. So that means it thinks I will use 24% to drive to Sundevik. I'm resetting my consumption here, and then we're off. Now I'm at the intersection in Sundevik. Let's just get a quick split time. Here it is. 1 hour and 3 minutes. There was quite a bit of traffic though. Right here after the intersection, I just pulled over. You can see that I've arrived with 57% state of charge, actually a bit more than the car predicted. Now we need to navigate home to Varde. It says I'll get back to Varde with 32%. But as usual, there's a lot of road work on this route, which means the car is currently calculating the return trip using the same road I took to get here. So I'll be able to tell you what the estimated outcome will be shortly once it says that we're heading in the right direction, which is south along the West Coast route. There we go. Shall we get a split time? We just stop it there. 2 hours and 5 minutes. I've arrived back in Varde with 37% state of charge and a consumption of 149 watt-hours per kilometer. I ended up with an average speed of just over 67 kilometers an hour. Normally it's right around 70 kilometers an hour, but that's simply because there's quite a bit of road work, especially on the beautiful West Coast route heading down. But I actually think that this result is more than acceptable. The car is officially rated with a WLTP consumption of 149 watt-hours per kilometer. The car's trip computer says that the car had a consumption on this trip of 149 watt-hours per kilometer. I'm aware that the WLTP cycle is a different mix of city driving, country roads, but also some highway driving. On the other hand, this trip has been done in the real world, and it was driven right around the freezing point, though in really nice weather. If I take these 149 watt-hours per kilometer and divide it into the cars, with the size of the traction battery, that actually corresponds to the car having a range of just about 309 kilometers. But if you then look at how many percentage points of the traction battery the car reports it has lost on the trip, it's about 40 percentage points. And if you calculate that backwards, it's actually closer to 350 kilometers. Of course, it's not certain that these percentages decrease completely linearly, so the truth lies somewhere between 309 and 350 kilometers. I actually think that's really good considering I recorded this video at the end of February. Now I've covered how the car performs on country roads, but what happens when, here in winter, you take the car on the fastest stretch of motorway we have in Denmark and try to maintain the highest possible legal average speed? I'm going to show you that now. I'm at the charging station by Esbjerg Airport. I'm about to do my Odense challenge. That means I'll be driving on the E20 motorway. It runs right down here, close to the airport. It's 129 kilometers along the E20 motorway to the roundabout in Odense at exit 50. Then I turn around and drive the 129 kilometers back again. Today, on a really rainy and actually also rather windy day, the temperature is about 7 degrees outside. As always, I'll just go into the car's navigation system and try to see how its route planning will arrange this trip for me. First and foremost, I should mention that a Hyundai Inster, among other things, can be equipped with this winter package, which, in addition to a heat pump, also gives the car the ability to precondition the battery, which makes sense that these two things are connected. But for some reason, that's how it is in an Inster. I go into the settings here, and then I select the battery preconditioning mode, as you can see here. I turn it off. So that means, of course, that I won't be able to charge as quickly. On the other hand, when I do need to charge, I won't be using power from the traction battery, and therefore I won't ruin my consumption figures for this drive. Then I go in and navigate to Odense, exit 50 on E20. I'm currently charging right now, and as you can see here, I currently have a 69% state of charge, heading towards 80%, where I've set the charging limit. And jumping into the navigation system here, it says that it wants me to use 20 percentage points on the trip. The Insta has this little quirk, let's call it that it always wants to arrive at its destination with 30% state of charge. And that's why I actually expect the car to ask me to charge along the way. I probably won't though, because I know there's a charging park at exit 50 in Odense, and I assume I can make it there. The Insta has the smallest battery of any car I've ever driven this challenge in. It's sold as having a 49 kilowatt hour battery, but realistically, that's the gross capacity. The net capacity is 46 kilowatt hour. It still thinks I need to add 7%, but I was supposed to arrive with 30%. So roughly speaking, it thinks that if I just keep driving, I'll arrive with 23% state of charge. So I reset my consumption meter, and then we start a stopwatch. Now I've arrived in Odense, exit 50. The split time here shows 1 hour and 6 minutes. As you can see here, I have 14% state of charge left. It might be possible for me to sneak it back to Lillebælt North. But honestly, I don't really want to try. And sometimes you also experience that this state of charge curve isn't completely linear, so it drops a bit faster towards the end. The car had calculated, or at least I calculated, that I would arrive with 23%. So it's a bit off, but it's also a small battery. I immediately think that I need to go back to 75%. I've used 65, 66 percentage points to get here, so I'm almost there at 74. I'm about to unplug the charger in a moment. What I'll just quickly do is navigate to Esbjerg Airport. Then the car will estimate that I'll arrive with 15% state of charge. I've unplugged the charger. Roughly speaking, I've lost about half an hour charging here. I think the charging time said 27 minutes. So now it's basically just back towards Esbjerg Airport. There we go. We just need to get a split time here. 2 hours and 42 minutes. Pretty much the same speed both ways. I've ended up here with 12% state of charge. Now let's check the consumption as well. That'll be quite interesting. 240 watt hours per kilometer. And actually, I think the car's navigation system was pretty accurate in estimating how much state of charge I would have when I arrived back here. I believe this is the first time I've had to charge this early on during my Odense challenge. But it's also the smallest traction battery I've ever taken on that trip. If we just quickly break down some numbers, I spent about half an hour from the moment I drove into the charging park at exit 50 until I left again. If I subtract that half hour from my time, then I actually have an average speed for the trip of 117.2 kilometers per hour. It's my claim that you can't maintain such a high average speed while obeying the speed limits elsewhere in Denmark. The highest average speed you can have on that trip is just about 120 kilometers an hour. And it doesn't depend so much on the car. It's more about the traffic. If we then look at the car's consumption, and thus its range, the car's onboard computer reports the consumption to be exactly 240 watt-hours per kilometer on that trip. And if I convert that to range, I'm just under 200 kilometers of range under those conditions with the average speed and so on. But if I look at the percentage points consumed from the traction battery, it becomes a little more optimistic. Then we get a little over 200 kilometers. A good rule of thumb is a 200 kilometers range in winter in an Odense challenge. That's roughly what you can expect from a Hyundai Inster. But another important factor for getting around quickly in an electric car is, of course, how well the car can handle DC fast charging. This car is specified to have a charging time from 10 to 80% of about half an hour. And naturally, that had to be tested. This car also has the winter package, which, in addition to a heat pump, also gives the car the ability to precondition the battery. And when you can precondition the battery, and if you use the system correctly, you'll get the same charging time all year round. And that's why I, of course, set out to test how fast this car can charge from 10 to 80%. And you can see how that turned out right here. Well, Hyundai says that this car can charge from 10 to 80% in half an hour. I have to say, it kept that promise. 30 minutes and 40 seconds. In my book, that's approved. I had a peak of 83 kilowatts, all as Hyundai promised. Thumbs up for that. Which brings me to the 5 best, but also the 5 worst things I can tell you about a Hyundai Inster. Let's start with the good. The space in the cabin is fabulous for a car of this size. 2. The second point on the positive list concerns the car's factory warranty. It's a classic Hyundai, 5 years with unlimited mileage. 3. The third point on the positive list is the navigation system. It's actually really good at estimating how much charge the car will have left when you arrive. And thumbs up for that. A fourth thing I'm really happy about is the car's design. Yes, it's a microcar, but this one has attitude and it has confidence. Fifth and final item on the positive list is that I just think there are many things that work really well in this car. Everything from the air conditioning, which you hardly notice is there, just works well. The DAB radio receives well. Bluetooth calling actually works really well too. The headlights work well. All these things that you just expect and almost shouldn't have to notice are there. It works well in this car. But of course, I also have a list of the 5 worst things I can tell you about this Hyundai Inster. At the top of that list is the price. But Jimmy, isn't this one of the cheapest electric cars in Denmark with a starting price of just over 24,000 euro? Yes, it is. But if you want it like this one, meaning a car that could potentially be your primary car, where you might have chosen the large traction battery, you've picked a different color, you've decided to go one equipment level up, maybe you've chosen the winter package and perhaps even the parking package with a 360-degree camera, etc., then the price suddenly jumps to just under 31,000 euro. On the other hand, if this car is meant to be a second vehicle at home, just for AC charging and local trips, then the 24,000 model would be sufficient. Another negative thing I can mention about this car, especially if you've spec'd it up to, for example, the model at just under 31,000 euro, the plastic quality suddenly seems a bit cheap. A third thing I find a bit unfortunate about the Hyundai Inster is that you don't have the option to fit a tow bar on the car, only a bike rack. My fourth criticism isn't actually mine, but I've heard it on FDM's podcast, Friggear, which I would also like to recommend. I've heard that people who are very broad-shouldered and also very tall can have trouble fitting in here, meaning out to the sides, because the car is so narrow. As I said, that's not something I've experienced myself. I've had an excellent experience with the cabin space. My fifth and final criticism is the car's driving characteristics, which they're not dangerous in any way, but just like in an Ioniq 5 and a Kia EV3, they're simply boring. Then there's just one more thing, which actually doesn't qualify as either the best or the worst thing about the car, but right now it's actually enough of a reason for me not to buy the car. This car here hasn't actually been Euro NCAP tested, meaning it hasn't undergone a crash test. I assume that, like most other modern cars, it would probably score 4 or 5 stars, and that would be fine for me. I've spoken with Hyundai's press manager about it, and she says that the car will probably be tested at the end of summer 2025, and then we'll know for sure whether this is a safe car. Right here, there's a video. It's about electric cars. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out. Over here, where I'm standing with the pew pew gum. Down below, you can click if you'd like to subscribe to my channel for free. There's more about this video and of my original channel in the description. And remember to look after yourselves and each other on YouTube. Let's keep the comment section friendly. Bye.